What's up, everybody? I'm here with Ben Poole, Mr. Tactical, and we are at RLS. RLS is having a big shindig today, showing off their new facility, their brand new truck outside, and we came in to check it out and hang out and meet everybody. So what's going on, man?
Oh, just another day. Just busy, being unstoppable.
Taking over the world. So, we talked about some posts and stuff on social media. We're all on social media. It's a full-time job. I mean, it's a lifestyle for a lot of guys.
It really is.
It's an opportunity to make money, to show what you do, to get your brand out there. But people don't realize that it's full of hate. I mean, there's a lot of great people out there, but there's also a lot of people that take it negatively. Whatever you're doing is wrong. You're an idiot. I mean, we've been called everything in the book out there. But you had a post recently kind of blew up, and it involved RLS Press. It was a flare valve on a mini split.
Yeah, it was. There's pressing is a very polarizing topic, right? And so if you want social media engagement, just make a press video. It's pretty much guaranteed to get views and comments. I was on a job doing a mini split, and we flared the air handler on the wall, and then I actually had a couple fittings, and I was like, you know what? Let's just use these press fittings on the outdoor unit. And so I just made this quick, 10-second video, and it just blew up. I think it's like 86,000 plays or something right now, and that's just on Instagram. That's not including Facebook. Several hundred comments and people battling each other in the comment section, but I think a lot of the comments when it comes to press is really just ignorance, right? And I don't say that in a negative way, I'm just saying that you're ignorant to the fact of what pressing really is and the capabilities of pressing, because you just haven't educated yourself, right? So I'm not trying to be disrespectful when I say ignorance. I'm just saying that you're just ignorant to the fact that you just don't know because you haven't taken the time to educate yourself.
Yeah, and it's relatively new. It's not new, but it's relatively new to our industry. I mean, it's been out for years and years and years, but a lot of people don't even know about it, don't understand it. I did the same thing. I put a mini split in my barn, and I was trying to bend the line, and I kinked it, so I had to cut it out, and everyone's like, oh, just braise an elbow in there. Well, you don't want to braise on lines for a mini split.
Yeah, I mean, if you can not braise, that would be great, right? Yeah. But a lot of the comments that we were getting on the post were like, oh, I would just braise it and be done. It's like, well, what is it that you're going to braise? Like, it's a flared fitting. Like, you're going to braise brass to brass? Like, how does that work, So it's like, again, these people are just spitting out comments that they just don't know, And, some people would say, oh, it's another mechanical failure point, or, you're adding an additional leak possibility. You're not wrong. I mean, it is an opportunity for a leak, right? If not done correctly. Yep. And what I have found with RLS is that if you just simply prep the pipe properly and take your time doing it, you're not going to have a leak. So I have had, since I've been using RLS over the last couple of years, I've had one fitting that produced a leak, and it wasn't prepped. The pipe was not prepped properly. So you can't blame the fitting, right? I think anytime anybody has a first experience with anything and it goes sideways, you're so quick to blame the product or the brand, when in reality, you yourself are the last person that you're going to blame, right? Nobody wants to accept responsibility that I messed up, right? But the great thing about RLS is, like, if you have a job and you're like, hey, your fitting freaking failed, I lost all this money on this job or whatever, RLS will tell you, cut the fitting out and send it to us, right? And they'll inspect it. And if it actually is a failed fitting, they'll reimburse you for the fitting and probably for the refrigerant, right? But I don't think they've ever had that happen well, I won't say ever. They have had some instances where they're like, yep, we totally failed on this one. This was a manufacturing flaw or whatever. But I would say 99% of the problem, it's the installer, not the part.
Yeah, so I've had one leak, and it was me. I didn't prep the pipe right. It was too close to a back wall of a cooler. And I thought it would work, and it ended up leaking. And it cost me like 6 hours. I had to pull cabinets out. I had to cut a stainless steel wall to rerun the line set. It cost me a lot, but that was just on me for not prepping it right. And I own it. I mean, I'll own any of my mistakes. I don't try to hide anything. I put stuff on the internet that I shouldn't put on the internet, and I've owned it. You know, all the negativity, I just accept it. If we're gonna put our work out there, we have to accept that. You know, if we screw up, we have to own it.
Right.
And when we don't screw up and people come and attack us for no reason, you know, it's really on them for not understanding what's going on.
Well, you get a lot of, like, again, a lot of comments where, you know, I would never put a pro press fitting. Well, first and foremost, it's not pro press, okay?
It's round, it's not hexagonal.
It's not pro press. And, you know, they're confusing, like, the Viga platform for water, right, with the RLS platform for HVACR. And there's a huge difference, you know, but some people are like, I would never put a pro press fitting on refrigeration. You can't handle the pressure. 1,000%. You're absolutely right. A pro press fitting can't handle the pressure. It's not a pro press fitting, right? The jaws are different. The fitting is different. They're manufactured different. They're annealed copper as opposed to, you know, Viga fittings are not. Yeah, it's the press itself and the jaw is completely round for RLS, while the Viga fitting and water fittings are hexagon shaped. So yeah, a completely different press. It doesn't mangle the diameter of the pipe when you press it. So yeah, it's definitely a game changer for sure. It's not going to be for everybody, right? And some people are like, I will never use. It's like never say never, dude, because I think with A2Ls and refrigerants like that becoming more prevalent today, as we're venturing into that, be prepared that manufacturers are setting their equipment up for pressing, right? So the bells on the King valves are no longer going to be there, right? It's just going to be a straight stem where you can just put your fitting right on it. And as of right now, I mean, if I install a unit, I mean, I'm cutting the bell off the King valve anyway and pressing a fitting on there, right? Like it's just easier, and it just makes sense. If I can not bust out the torches, I'm not going to bust out the torches.
No, I mean, because it's not just torch, it's nitrogen. You're flowing nitrogen, fire watch, you know.
Why would I flow nitrogen?
That's one of the comments, right? But yeah, so there's a lot of variables to it. I love pressing. I was skeptical at first, and then I had the opportunity to do it, and I won't go back. I do a lot of commercial buildings where you have to have fire watch, you have to get burn permits and stuff like that. And I've had units where I've brazed in stubs into my compressors at the shop, cap them off, take them in there. I cut the old compressor out, cut the new compressor, match the lines up, press it in. I'm pulling a vacuum, you know, I'm changing my filter dryer. I will, on a lot of my systems, I will go to a flare dryer with sight glass combo, and that way I can change it in the future. I mean, just makes it easy, and I utilize their flare fittings for that.
So I didn't even realize till yesterday that RLS makes sight glasses, right? And I was like, man, this is a game changer. I didn't know that they made shut-off valves. Yeah. Right? Like, this is awesome. I knew they made filter dryers, which I haven't used yet, but... Yeah, I mean, it's just interesting. The fitting that I used, there's a name for it. I don't even remember what they're called, the mini split fittings.
Yeah, I just look. I'm not.
So, but it's basically, it's got a built-in flare, and a lot of people would say, you know, even some of the comments, again, I would never trust a machined flare. Oh, but you'll trust your hand-bent flare in the field because you're better than a machine, right? You're more accurate than a machine that's set at certain parameters, right? Is going to be.
Well, even the fancy flaring tools, you can still mess it up as being human. You're not a machine. You didn't
100%.
create that. It's those tools are only as good as the person using them.
100%.
And you can still mess up. Even, simple as some of those tools are, they lock in place. If you don't do it right, it's screwed up and it's going to leak.
Well, a lot of guys will say, that pressing is taking the skill out of the trade. And it's just like, it takes, no matter the method of what you're using, it still takes a level of skill, right? It takes skill to operate a torch properly. And in fact, most guys out there, even if you've been brazing for 10, 15 years, you probably still don't set your torches the way that they're supposed to be set, right? No. When was the last time you dialed in your pressure on your regulator to what the tip is supposed to be, right? When was the last time you changed your tip and then changed your regulator, right? Now, there are some guys out there that are like, I do that all the time. Good for you, right? You're doing the job the right way, but a lot of times, most guys don't. They don't even know that you're supposed to change the pressure every time you change the tip.
Yeah, I've got a guy that he only had B-tank, and we don't have a B-tank for him. He's got to use oxyacetylene setup, and he came from residential, and he's not doing commercial, what I do. And the first time he opened his torch, I was like, what in the world? I was like, whoa, let's start over at the beginning. I was like, no one showed you? He's like, no, all I know is B takes. I love doing it for video just because it's so loud and people freak out. They're like, what is that? I'm like, yeah. I don't use it unless I have to, but yeah. So,
yeah, no matter what you do, it takes a level of skill, whether you're pressing, whether you're brazing, whether you're using a B-tank torch, it doesn't matter, turbo torch, whatever you want to call them. Everything takes a level of skill, right? It's just different. And it's not for everybody, but don't sit here and say that you're never going to use press because, I mean, dude, the industry's going that way, right? And it's like once you do go that way, you're kind of like, I'm not sure why I was so combative on this whole time, right? And then you just make yourself look like an idiot. Like, just be open to the conversation instead of just condemning everything because it's different, you know? And it's not really new. No. It's been around for a long time.
Yeah, which is relatively new to most guys. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, when I first seen it, I thought it was brand new. It had been out for years and years and years.
Well, they've been pressing it overseas for 30 years, right?
I think RLS have like 19 million fittings in the field right now or something. I mean, that's a ton of fittings, dude.
Yeah, and again, comments are like, this stuff's not even been tested long enough for us to know. Okay, bro.
Yeah. No.
Again, if you don't know what you're saying, just don't say it.
Well, I get the comments, I wouldn't put that in a freezer. The extreme temperatures, the extreme cold, the heat. I'm like, no, it's perfectly fine, man. It works great. Oh, I wouldn't put that in your expansion valve. No, it's fine. It's great. Dude, I don't care. It's negative 20 in here or whatever. The refrigerant is negative, 40 or whatever. I don't care. I'm going to use it. It works great. I haven't had a failure due to temperature swings. I've seen it used on every refrigerant, 410, 22, some of the other stuff, 448, 449, and I haven't seen any issues with it. I haven't seen it on any of the ATL stuff just because that's new, and it's not really in my world as far as the restaurant side stuff like I do. I want to try. I've got a Delfield cooler at home, it's R290, and I want to throw some fittings on there and see, because they're testing, I believe. I don't think it's proved yet, but I think it'll be just fine. Truthfully.
I mean, again, this stuff is tested, man, right?
Yeah.
And it's all done it's all put together by machines. In fact, yesterday I had the Navac tool and we took a piece of copper and we made a flare fitting, right? And we have a mini split in here we're gonna do some stuff with, and I took the nut off and I slid it on there, perfect, right? And Paul says, you know what I would like to see? I like to compare that to our flare fitting on our tool that gets machined, right? So we took it out there and we used the micrometer, and we tested, the diameter of the flare, excuse me, and how good the flare was, and it lined up within spec, right? So like the Navac tool freaking works, right?
Oh yeah.
The difference between you flaring your own copper with a Navac tool, or any other tool, if you will, and using an RLS flared fitting is that the RLS flare fittings are pressed in a machine, right? And the copper is slightly thicker than because you're thinning out the copper essentially when you're doing your own flare. And so, you're going to be able the flare itself is going to be able to take on more torque without cracking, as opposed to your flare that you make as you thin out the copper. The more torque you put on there, right, you're stressing out that copper, and it could crack. And if it cracks, you're going to have a leak, right? Because it doesn't think about how many times guys have gone back to mini splits, right?
The first thing he checks flares.
For sure, because that's 99% of the problem, right? Yeah, 99% of the problem with any mini split is usually lack of refrigerant, right? And it's usually because the flare wasn't done properly.
Well, and that people aren't using torque wrenches. They get crescent wrenches out there. And
dude, crescent wrenches are the devil, dude. Don't use crescent wrenches, right? It's like you go to a job site, you notice oil around the nut, right?
Yeah.
The fix isn't
tighter.
More torque, right? I promise the problem is less torque. I promise, right? It's not more torque and then let's make it worse, add some gas and then bone out, right? Yeah. And a lot of guys will use the excuse of like, well, hey man, I mean, I went there, it took me a couple times, but I never had to go back after that, right? It's the reason you never had to go back was because the customer didn't call you back. They called somebody else who actually came and fixed the problem.
But that's the same guys that are in the comments saying that, that's a potential leak point.
Yeah.
The guys out there with a crescent wrench or channel locks just hogging.
And all those guys are the same guys that have private accounts that don't post about HVAC, right?
That gets me.
They don't post about their own work. They just want to criticize everybody else's work.
That's the first thing I do. Like, I can be pretty petty. I try not to be because I've gotten in trouble for doing some stuff. But like, if someone's just dogging on me, first thing I do is I click on their little icon and I go look, and it says private account. I'm like, yeah, I don't see you out here putting yourself in front of the world, but you're the first one to jump on my post or Ben's post or any of our other friends' posts, and I would have done it that way. Well, how do you do it? Educate me, because I'm more than welcome to learn from somebody else. I would love that. I want to learn as much as I can. If you have a way to teach me to do something, please show me. I want to see.
Well, these guys are quick to try to tell you how to do things, right? And make you tell you that you should be open to doing things this different way, right? But then they're not open, right? So it's like this whole thing, like even like this whole woke movement, right? Where it's like, hey, you need to be more tolerant with people and accepting, right? But then you're not willing to be tolerant and accepting to me. It's like, I'm just supposed to bow down to whatever it is that you believe, right? Like, this is a two-way street, dude. You can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
And it seems like in the comment section, this is the same way.
Yeah.
So
you want to read a couple of these comments? You want to get any from Facebook or Instagram? Facebook seems to be a little more toxic.
I mean, there's a guy on here, Snyder.Blake _ says, what size tampon you use?
What does that even have to do with anything? It's just, I hope, does he feel better that he said that? You know what I mean? What does that have to do? That's not even relevant.
I mean, it's funny, but if I'm just here to just poke fun and just cause ruckus, like here's the thing, right? All these guys on social media, and you complain that you want more followers, and I just want to grow my audience and this and that. Let me just tell you, the more followers you have, the more likes you have on your posts, the more comments come in, right? And the more comments you get, they're not all good, right? I remember when we first started on the Instagram stuff, is like we kind of helped cultivate this community, and it was just this awesome community. We everybody's lifting each other up, right? But then the more that this community grows, right? What we're seeing is a lot of guys now filtering over from Facebook and off of TikTok, right, onto the Instagram platform that we've worked really hard to build this community that uplifts each other, right? And is willing to help teach and learn that a lot of that negativity now is infiltrating the Instagram world. And it's just funny, dude. And you really have to you have to laugh, but at the same time you have to be cautious, because we have to try to protect what we've taken all this time and effort and energy to build, you know? So otherwise these guys will come in and just tear it down.
You can't let it get to you. I used to be that way on the internet. I'd see something, I'd go just trash it or be negative, and I was that way in all my posts, everything. And then one day, a friend of mine, I was driving to a job site, I was driving to a Chuck E. Cheese, working on a dish machine. I remember it vividly. A friend of mine called me. He goes, Pat, why are you like this on the internet? He said, this isn't you. He said, why are you doing this? And I sat there and I talked to this guy for an hour, cried on the phone, everything. And from that day forward, I realized that that's not who I want to be, and why am I doing it? And I've changed my life just because I don't do that to people. I don't want people do that to me. Why am I doing that to people? And ever since then, things have gotten so much better in my life.
Yeah. Zach Desjardins told me one time, he's like, dude, I don't even read the comments. He's like, he goes, you could literally save somebody's life live on the air, right? And people would be like, oh man, you see his shoes? I can't believe you'd wear those shoes in that video.
I can't believe you did CPR that way.
Yeah, right?
I can't believe you applied a turbot that way. That's dumb.
I know you saved his life, but you did that wrong, right? So
that's a good point. And Zach's probably a good person to get that information from, I'm sure. He's probably heard it all. Speaking of Zach, I've watched some of his videos lately. He showed a mistake he made, and he owned it. And that resonated with me. I'm like, yes, we need more people to do that. Because a lot of these guys just put up perfection. And it's not.
Well, it's easy to edit out all the bad stuff, right? Or the stuff that you missed, And I didn't put this on social media, but we did. Efren and I, we were on a job. It was late. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning, and we were changing out a compressor on a big commercial unit. And we had to hoist all this stuff up this big commercial ladder, right, vertical ladder up the side of the wall, and it was just not in thinking space. We were trucking, trying to get this stuff done, right? We change it out, we pressure test, we start pulling vacuum and this and that. Well, one of the things that I didn't do was change the filter dryer because I didn't see it, because it was tucked up. The pipes came out and went way up behind this little bar thing in this commercial unit, right? And it just didn't even register with me, right? And so we get it all done, we add refrigerant back into the unit, we go to fire it up, and comes on, my pressures go 600-700. I've never even had pressures go that high, right?
Start freaking out.
It went boom, everything shuts back down, and I was all, what in the world is this? You know what I mean? And then I thought, dude, is there a filter dryer on this thing? And then I thought, why didn't I change a filter dryer? Like, that's just so automatic to change a filter dryer, right? It's just, for whatever reason, it just escaped me. And, you know, and I can come up with whatever excuse you want, you know, but like, I'm not in the field that much anymore, right? So it's like, that is one of the things about being out of the field for a long period of time, that you forget little things that you're supposed to do, right? And a filter dryer may be a little thing, but it has a drastic impact, right? And so we fired up the system again, and I found that filter dryer, and I put my hands on both sides of it, and one side was hot and the other side was super cold, and I said, here's the problem right here, dude. So again, we're like 2 a.m, right? So we had to go. I went and I slept in the parking lot of a supply house that was down the street and just waited. I didn't want to have to go all the way home and then come all the way back. And so, we got a filter dryer in the morning, changed it out. But for whatever reason, when that compressor went bad, there was so much junk in that system that we changed that filter dryer out 3 times.
Wow.
Yeah. I've never had that happen to me before,
That's
you know,
nuts.
But it just happens. Sometimes it just is what it is, you know? So, but we actually got to a point, the second time we changed out the valve, or the filter dryer, we put in little shutoff valves on each end.
So you could just valve it off?
Valve it off, pull it out, put it in, pull a vacuum on that little bitty section, right? And it just saves a lot of time and effort.
You know, RLS has fittings for that, right?
Yeah, imagine that, right?
So, I mean, it's just, these guys on the internet, I don't know how to explain it or what it is. I mean, it can get to you. I mean, you've got 300 comments here, and it's just...
Yeah, Black and Silver Services says, doesn't make sense to flare then press. Seems like you're wasting more time and material. Well, I'm not flaring and pressing. I'm just pressing.
Flare's already there.
Flare's already there. And that's, I think, again, just people not knowing, right? Being they're commenting on something that they're uneducated on, and those flare fittings are already flared. They come ready. Prep the pipe, put the pipe in, and you press it, and you're done.
Well, and you know, people like, oh, it's a leak point. You know, if you read the standards of practices as far as what to prep the pipe for a braze joint and how to prep the pipe for a press joint, it's the same exact process. But these guys aren't doing that process when they're brazing, because they're getting away with it, because they're just slapping so much brazing rod in there or alloy in there, filling up every gap. It just gets away with it. But you know, you're adding turbulence to the system if you don't deburr and ream.
But people don't think about that stuff, right? They just go, well, the system runs just fine. But does it?
Yeah.
But does it, right? And I always say, just because it's as typical as a homeowner going, oh, you ask a homeowner, hey, when was the last time you had it maintenance? Oh, my system runs just fine. But does it, right? It's like, just because a system is running doesn't mean it's running right, you know? And you adding a swag to the system, right, and brazing something in, if you put that the wrong direction, you're creating turbulence, right? If you don't do certain things a certain way, you might have a minor effect here, but if you have a bunch of minor effects, it equals up to big effects, right? And so just doing the little things right is what I've always told people. Do the little things right. They add up to big things, right? It's like saving change. Every day you drop your change in a jar, right? Before you know it, you got a couple $100 in this jar, just because you're just consistently doing the little things that add up to big things. So, and HVAC's no different. So
yeah, these guys they're pretty nuts. I mean, just the things they say, and like you said, it's uneducated. They don't realize that it's actually a great product. It's a viable product. It saves time. It saves firewatch. It saves money. You have the cost of the tool. You have the cost of the fittings. They're a little more than normal fittings, but you make up for that, man. Like I said, in my situation, I have to have firewatch a lot of times, and guess what? I'd rather buy those fittings than have to have another guy stand there. And I've got some historic buildings. They make you stand there 8 hours when the torch is out. So how am I going to justify a second guy there for 12, 16 hours?
So I've never actually had to do what do they call that? Hot permits.
Hot workmanship.
I never had to deal with any of that. It's just not my environment. So.
Oh, it's rough, man. I got a university. It's all historic, and you don't even get a permit from the university. You used to go to the county building for the county in Marion County, Indianapolis, and that's like a 3-hour ordeal. Just going there, and when you're done, you get to get back there and check out.
But do the people who are there, do they know that you're not allowed to be using flame, or could you just do it and nobody knows?
Well, I've done it, and I didn't know I had to do it, and I got away with it. But I have a guy that likes to use it as an excuse not to do the job there.
Sure.
So he used, well, I could get burnt paint, I could do stuff at the county and stuff, and most of the stuff we work on, we tell him just to wheel it out the back door and wheel it outside and braze outside.
Well, then, it's very similar like EPA law, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're not supposed to vent refrigerant, but guys do it all the time, you know?
Yeah,
So.
but no, I mean, I don't want to burn down a historic building.
I wouldn't either. I'd feel terrible about that.
Yeah, I don't want to.
Especially if you knew you're not supposed to be brazing, right?
Well, I didn't know at first, and now I know in those buildings, so I try everything I can. Like, we had a system that had leaks, and we couldn't find the leaks. I didn't know how to get on this cooler. They'd done several remodels, and eventually we get the right maintenance guy. He said, hey, you take out that light fixture, and you got to climb up on top. I wasn't fitting in the hole. My son had been working for us for like 2 weeks. And he went with a hole, and I gave him, because other guys put dye in there. I was like, dude, take this light. It should shine like a Christmas tree up there. And he found it. It was an elbow. I was leaking at the braze joint. He found it, and he wiped it off, and you could still see it. I was like, okay. I was like, come out. I sent him up there. We reclaimed the system. We pumped it down, reclaimed it. And we went outside. I said, I'm going to show you something. I showed him how to put in a filter dryer with RLS. Pressed it in. I walked him through the process. I shoved it up in the hole. I gave him a section of pipe, 290s. I said, do exactly what I showed you out there, and we'll be good. And a half hour later, he's crawling back out. It's good. It pumped down to like 200 microns, and we were on the road. I mean, the guys say it takes a skill out of it, but it's another tool. It's another tool you can add to that arsenal. You're
100%.
never going to be able to get away from brazing 100%.
Yep.
But give yourself an opportunity to make more money with this or any other press. You know, there's opportunities out there. Just don't.
Yeah, I mean, it's not inexpensive to get into pressing, right?
No.
The fittings are not cheap for sure, and the tool itself and the jaws are not cheap. I mean, you're going to spend $3,500, $4,000 on a setup for refrigeration pressing, right? And one of the comments is, can you use it on low temp refrigeration? And yeah, absolutely you can, you know? I think the only thing that you really can't use it on right now is going to be CO2, but that's probably coming in the near future.
No, I'm sure they're testing it.
Yeah, so yeah, it's when you get into transcritical refrigeration, refrigerants like CO2, I mean, there's massive pressures involved.
Yeah, that's not my world. I see those guys working on it, and I'm intrigued by it, but then I start seeing the pressures, and it's like looking at gauges those guys are using. I'm like, oh, why do I want to deal with this? Like people think R290 is a bomb. I'm like, this thing's like over 1,000 psi, and you're worried about 6 ounces of R290 in a cooler?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely the skeptical guys that are like, hey, dude, that stuff will never hold up to the pressure. And it's like, dude, this stuff's been so over-tested and over-engineered, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, so this guy says, I don't get it, though. Like, with modern flaring tools, the flares come out perfect, and I've never had issues with them leaking.
You're not wrong.
You're not wrong, but you may be great at using that modern tool.
For sure.
I mean, like you said, Navac makes a great tool, but I could grab that Navac tool and never use it, and I could screw it up. And I think I did a good job, and I could stick it on there and cause a huge leak, cost myself hundreds of dollars in refrigerant, you know.
Yeah, what happens if you don't, what happens on a regular flare tool if you don't remount the copper? Right? Now you have a lip in there that's not going to seat proper, right? And you potential leak. What happens if you have a perfect flare, but then you don't torque down the nut properly, right? Like you have a pretty high potential for a leak, right? So again, it's doing those little things that make a big difference. For me, what I really like about these fittings is that I can actually put these fittings on before I even show up to the job site and torque them down and everything, right? Especially if I'm doing multi-port, where I got 4 ports, right? So now I got 8 ports. Instead of working down low on the ground, trying to get my wrench in here and tighten up all these things, I can actually put this thing up on the tailgate of a truck, right? Or at the shop on the bench. I put all my fittings on. I can torque them all down with a torque wrench, take that unit to the job site or take it off the tailgate, throw it on the ground, and then all I gotta do is prep my copper, slide it in, crimp. It's done.
It's a lifesaver. Like I said, I've seen a manufacturer of some restaurant stuff I work on. They use it when attaching the condensing unit to a cold well. And I had a guy I worked with. He's like, "Oh, these things are junk. These things leak. These things leak. These things leak." And he's like, "I got one that's got 2 leaks." And I was like, "Cut them out and give them to me." I said, "I want to send it back to the manufacturer." He cut them out and handed it to me. I looked in, shut my light in there, and you can see the O-rings pushed out. There's like, I'm not even just wasting my time. This was improper installation by a company that makes this drop-in cold well. They're not even teaching their guys how to do it right. I said, so it's not the fitting. I said, you want to go out there? I said, I'll take you out there with my tool. I'll go buy the fittings, and we'll put it in right now and show you that it works.
If you look at just look at HVAC brands, right? So Carrier, Lennox, Trane, Rheem, all these guys, right? A lot of people will say, oh man, I hate Carrier, or I hate Lennox, or I hate Trane, right? And you go, why? Well, those things are always breaking. Why, right? Are you blaming the brand? And is the brand truly responsible for that? Or should you be blaming the guy who put the unit in improperly, right? That caused all of these effects that you're just now having to deal with, right? And usually we blame the brands instead of blaming the guys who are just incompetent and don't know what they're doing. And
that's the name you see on it.
Just because you've been doing this for 20 years doesn't mean you're doing it right. And that's a huge problem in our industry. I think that the two biggest problems in our trade are lack of education, right? Guys think they know when they don't know. They just adopted a bad practice and they think that's the way that it's done, and they just repeat it for 20 years, right? And then number two is we have an ego problem. And guys walking around thinking they know everything there is, right? Totally closed-minded, don't want to learn anything new, right? And those guys are dangerous. I think that you have to be open-minded to new technology, to new methods. And reality is if you're standing in a room full of HVAC guys, there's a really high probability that you are not the smartest guy in the room. Really high probability, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a good idea to maybe stop talking so much and open your ears and listen. There's a reason you have two ears and one mouth, right? Do twice the amount of listening as you do talking.
I like that.
And so if you do a little bit more listening, you'd be surprised what you can learn if you just simply close your mouth.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, definitely. And man, a lot of these younger guys are coming up are just they are smart. They're doing their work, and they know they're adopting this technology. They're teaching this technology, or living this technology. And those guys kind of get a bad rep because, you got the older guys, the guys have been doing this 30, 35 years, and they just want to crap on anything they see come out just because it's not what they've done their entire life. But I mean, everything has changed in the last 30 years. Everything's changed in the last 15 years. I mean, in the last 10 years, the advances in technologies, tooling, everything is just gone off the board. I mean, it's just, we got to adapt these changes, especially with the refrigerants coming out and everything else. You have to do it.
I really wish that I could have recorded stuff in the shop yesterday here at RLS. But I'm not allowed to record the machines and stuff like that. But I'm like this guy's comment says, I don't trust factory flares. And it's just like, dude, these flares, these flares are better than the flares that you're going to flare. And so, but it's like, how do you argue that with somebody who's not willing to be open-minded to it, right? And so sometimes it's just, it's a wasted effort. So you can't help people who aren't willing to help themselves, right?
Anytime I do anything that shows RLS, press, refrigerator pressing, I always put on there, if you're in the Indianapolis area where I'm from, let me know. I will take time off from my job. I will bring my personal tool out there. I will bring some fittings, and I will show you how to do this and show you that this is a viable option, that you will want to do this if you try it one time.
Yeah. That holds true with me. If you're in the Austin, Texas area and you want to experience what pressing is all about on a job, I'll bring my tool down and some fittings and we'll get it done.
Yeah, so. I'm a firm believer in it, man. It's the way, it's definitely an advantage. Like you said, you're never going to do away with brazing, but this is it.
Yeah, you still need to learn how to braze. You still need to know how to braze. You still need to be proficient at brazing. And one thing that I've learned over the years is there's a difference between being good at something and being proficient at something. And the only way that you're going to be proficient at it is if you keep doing it, right? So just because you get into the press game and you're not really brazing anymore, you still need to braze things to stay proficient at it, because every skill is a perishable skill, right? You still might be able to execute that skill, but you may not be proficient at it anymore. So
sweet. Well, you want to read a couple more and then we'll get out of here?
Using press on installation of mini split just means you suck at flares.
Dude, it's
you got it. You caught me, dude. Red-handed, man. I'm terrible at flaring.
You got that great little Navac tool, man. That thing's a blessing. And
so in 2000 and about 10, when they had the flare tools that you would just spin like this, right? Like we were taking AC units off of homes and doing mini splits over the entire home. Like we would do like eight heads around the entire house, like every bedroom, living area, all this stuff. And so we were going through every day doing this, right?
Wear yourself out, dude.
And so a buddy of mine owned a
Carpal
machining
tunnel.
shop, and I said, hey, can we take this T handle off of this tool and put a thing on here where I can do like a 9/16 socket with my drill, right?
Yeah.
My impact. And he's like, yeah, I can do that. So the next day he had me an adapter, and so we retrofitted it onto the tool. And so the next job we went to, I put the thing in there and go, right? And I'd do it twice because you're supposed to do them twice, right? And so I'd down and back and then down and back. And dude, what a game changer that was. That was in 2010, right? And so now when you buy the T handles today, like they come with like a 3/8 or 1/2 inch drive in the back, right? For like a ratchet, but you can put it for an adapter with a drill. And so I didn't know anybody back then who had anything like that, but everybody, when they saw my tool, they were just like, dude, you need to patent that. And I was like, I don't have time for that. Like, I'm busy working,
now you're like, man,
imagine that if I would have patented it, right?
But now even the hand ones have that torque release in there, so you can't over tighten.
It's got a clutch.
Yeah, clutch, so you can't like over tighten it.
Yeah.
You can't like over stress the metal. I mean, I remember when I first started doing it, I had the block and you crank it in there, and no one ever told me how far you gotta let that copper hang out. So I'm sure I had some pretty ugly flares out there that probably leaked to death.
Yeah, the ones that I always had had the clutch on it, but they give you an extra little tool that you stick it across, like, your bar goes like this, you stick it across your bar like this, and it measures the depth of the copper, right?
I never had the fancy one, but I had the little cheap one where it's like you
the
slide
tool
it
was
over.
sold separately.
Yeah,
The depth gauge was sold separately. I'm trying to see who else. Another guy. This has to be a joke.
This guy says, when the refrigerant is gone, I get the service call. This is job security. Hacks be hacks. Clients won't let them in their house again. More work for this guy. But hack's gonna be hacks. That's the great part. How's it a hack? I mean,
again, it's ignorance, right? It's because it's so out of the norm of what they've been taught is supposed to be normal, that it's just automatically, there's the buzzword. It's a hack, automatic, right?
This guy, shitty joints, sell more mini splits. I'll take the money. I mean, it's clueless. So I won't take any more of your time. I figure we just come on here and address some of these things and talk about RLS. They're a really great company that stands behind their products, stands behind their guys. If you guys are ever in the St. Louis, Missouri area and you want to check out their facility, get a hold of Jessica, get a hold of the RLS team on Instagram, and they would love to show you the facility, show off their stuff. They've got a truck they just outfitted. We're getting to go check it out, but it's going to be touring the country. They hired a guy right out of college, and he's gonna be a traveling road show, and I look forward to seeing it. So if it's anywhere near me, I guarantee I'm taking off that date. I'm gonna hang out on the truck. So.
Same here. Yeah, if it comes to Texas, we're going. So.
I may have to come to Texas, come see you. My wife's got a friend in Austin, and she's been trying to get me to go down there for years. So
sounds good.
Well, good seeing you, buddy.
You too, brother.